Hey, everybody. We are back with Out of Ammo. Um, I feel like that was a really funny name when we started. We're going to have to get some feedback on if that's good or not, but I feel like it's fitting of our time right now. But we appreciate everybody joining us. Once again, we just love coming together every couple weeks and just kind of listening to seeing where the conversation takes us. So if anybody has any questions, or doesn't even have to be questions, just, just like the American Rifle Series always has a comment on anything going on in the shooting world. You give us something to talk about, we'll cover it, and we'll just see where this goes for the next hour. But we hope it's 60% entertaining and 40% educational. So we'll go from there. But first off, let's say kudos to Solinsky for doing those breakdowns on his freaking stages. Can we just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure. I should be dropping another one tomorrow, too.
So you just decided you were watching ESPN's like Monday morning quarterback stuff one day and decided you were going to come up with those videos?
No, actually, there was a comment on one of my previous videos that was just like me shooting a stage. One of the guys asked if I could do a breakdown on like why I was doing what I was doing during the stage. And so I just finally got around to actually having good footage, because if you remember from Tennessee, I did not get any footage, partially due to the fact that I wrecked my car on the way to the match and to the fact that it was cold as balls. And I didn't feel like putting up a camera that day. So I went to the match at Quantico 2 weeks ago and actually remembered to hit play on all my cameras for every stage. It's much harder than you think, even though it's 2 buttons. I'm like turning it off sometimes because I forgot to turn it off the last time. And then I go home at the end of the day and I've got like 3 videos and the rest are just staring at a tree. It's really frustrating.
But yeah, it happens. Well, that's good. So for some of y'all that haven't seen it, basically, we've been sharing it to some of the long range tactic stuff, but Solinsky also, you can look up his page, Distinguished Tactical, and he's got various 22 stages that he shows you how the stage was shot, and he kind of goes back and does a breakdown of it. So it's a good 4 minutes of learning at a time or so for anybody that wants to check that out. So it's a good resource for any of y'all that are wanting to just pick people's brains and get good tools for your toolbox. So speaking of tools, though, JD, I'm just kidding. I really mean that thing behind JD. Tell us about what's on the tripod there, JD.
Oh, what's on the tripod? So, yeah, after our last BS session, I was informed via PM that red curtains weren't cutting it. I had to spice it up somehow. So I spiced it up.
Tripod pistol?
Yeah, but what is it?
It's
as you wear your 1911 shirt.
Yeah, this really says it all. It's a 1911 from Springfield Arms, and it's sporting a 10-round magazine, not a 7, not an 8. It's a 10-rounder.
Oh my God! He came into 1950.
You know who you are. Yeah, if you're listening, you know who you are. Is that enough flair? You can answer me later.
As he sips on his tea.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Now the question is, can you still hit shit with it?
Oh yes, I can. I'm good till about 10 meters.
Prove it. See, that's the problem.
But it won 2 world wars.
Go to Europe and you'll be good.
It won 2 world wars. Oh man, computer's freaking out. This is always fun. There we go. All right. Let's see. Who shot last weekend?
I did not shoot last weekend. I had a weekend off for the first time in a while.
That's hard to believe. JD, did you not shoot last weekend?
No, I took my daughter backpacking for her first trip. I shot this morning, though. It's fairly wet here in North Carolina, so it's cooler than anticipated. But it's good.
I went and shot. Finally shot for the first time with that foundation. That thing is sweet. I try not to be a bandwagoner, but I just can't help but understand what all the Oklahoma guys, why they all run impacts and foundations, because that was pretty silly.
What match you shoot?
Oh, no, I'm prepping for the Alabama Precision match this coming weekend. Which, by the way,
you meant like just shoot in general? Yeah, I don't do that unless it's a match.
Well, that's fair. But no, I just went and practiced. But no, the Alabama Precision Challenge, or I forget what they call. They have like 4 one-day matches a year, and I'm used to like where like a big match on a one-day match is like 50 people. There's 10 squads, 10 stages, and there's 13 shooters per squad signed up for a one-day match, and they swear they're going to be done by like 3. And I'm just a little bit. I don't know. Apparently they do it. They do it all the time. But yeah, it's gonna be a big match.
I'll be impressed if they can finish that by 3.
That's a big match. So, but yeah, so I was getting ready for that. Went and shot off a tank trap without a tripod. You're welcome, Solinsky.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's right.
So proud of you.
Off a tank trap that I suck at. So that was incredibly fun. And then Courtney showed me up. They had a KYL rack at like 600 yards. It went from like a 12-incher down to a 3-incher, and she missed 1 shot to clear 6 plates. I was like, you're a jerk. So in case anybody wondered, my wife's a better shot than I am. So.
Oh, we didn't wonder. We all knew that. So speaking of tripods, I had this great idea this week, or at least it was great in my mind, but I was probably drunk when I came up with it. So you've all got kids, so you've probably seen the original Incredibles.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the scene where I think it's Edna is screaming no capes and it just reverts back to like somebody getting killed by a cape? I want to do a video where it's her screaming no tripods and it just goes to like cuts to footage of somebody making
just
the worst mistakes of their life with a tripod, and like all the different people you see, like the guy trying to force it, the sloth guy that like gets everything set up and then times out with no shots off. Like, I think it would be hilarious. But I want to do
mounts
that.
His rifle and then it falls over when he turns away to get
reaches down for his data book and the rifle just teeters over.
I have ruined 2 pair of binos that way. Just had them tip over in the wind and just eat crap on the concrete. It happens. I think my favorite
4 CLR was that way.
Oh, that picture you posted of me from Night 4 CLR, I'm just looking dejected at like stage 18. That was the whole weekend. That was pretty miserable.
I think everybody was.
But no, my favorite tripod shooter is the one that like goes to like move from like one target to target 2, and his back leg is just sitting there bouncing, and he's just getting constant waving in his gun, and he can't figure out why he's shooting so slow. Oh man!
Or the gear bomb.
Yeah. Or they don't fully tighten one of the legs. They put their rifle on. It's just.
All right, so we can make fun of tripods, and I am the world's worst. I use a tripod as an absolute crutch, and I will definitely have my tripod this weekend, and I will shoot off of it just for you, Solinsky. But let's make this educational for like 2 minutes.
Okay.
So I know a lot of, especially if you're a new shooter watching this, and you see guys that run, $1,500 tripods or, 10-pound tripods or somewhere in between. They're a tool, and that's exactly what they are, but just don't use them as a crutch. And I will tell you, there's a lot to be said for dry firing with your tripod, because the tripod manipulation itself is an important part of it, right? So I'll see a lot of guys like take their leg and they'll push from left to right, and usually if you're a right-handed shooter, your tripod's going to be on your right side, and they'll push the leg from left to right. And then what they did is they just made their tripod close up closer. Now it's less stable. It's more likely to wobble, and you're kind of defeating the purpose of what you want from tripod. So there's little tricks as simple as always pick your tripod up, set it to your right, and pull it left as you're always moving, right? So there's little tricks like that. But I will tell you, if there's what's the old saying, never try something new in a match, right? Like you should practice it beforehand. Yeah. The first time I ever tried to run a tripod was on a 12-round stage, and I was definitely the guy that timed out and totally got like a 3 out of 12. If you've never shot with a tripod, please practice at home before you try it at a match, or you will be the guy that ends up on Solinsky's no tripods video. So, but just because of that, I think Solinsky owes us some tripod instructional videos for LRT.
I definitely could. The big thing with tripods that drives me nuts is don't be committed to it. So like if you're trying to force it, or you're trying it that first time at a match and you're 30 seconds into a 90-second stage and you haven't gotten a shot off, throw it. Like I've literally thrown my tripod multiple times to get it out of the way, get my bag, and just run the stage with a bag. Because what happens is people like get committed to like, I have to use the tripod. and then they're 87 seconds into the 90-second stage and still haven't gotten a shot off because they've just been trying to force the tripod to work, and it won't.
It is true. I think that's a good piece of advice for running stages in general too, is like, you know, what do they say? Everybody's got a plan till you get hit in the mouth. I think too many people try to force a bad stage for too long. And at some point it's probably good to just get 4 or 5 points rather than just trying to force a square peg into a round hole, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that happens.
Yeah,
What?
and don't change your stage plan like because the guy in front of you did something different. That's another one. Like I'll see
You're
guys
not
and
supposed
you'll
to
see
copy
this.
the winning shooter. What?
I've seen people mainly in like USPSA and 3-gun and stuff. You'll see it more, but like they'll have the stage plan. They've gone through it. They've done their walkthrough. They've like been thinking about their plan for 10 minutes, and then they see the guy before them do something different. And they're like, oh, and they throw all of it out the window and try something they've thought about for 30 seconds. Usually doesn't work.
I've only shot one USPSA match, but the carousel of guys just walking through their stage plan for like 10 minutes before the stage got shot was just like, I would just go sit on a picnic table and watch them do it. I was like, I can't even, I do one walkthrough to make sure I knew where the targets were. And I was like, I can walk this a million times and I'm still not going to have a plan. I don't understand how they function. Apparently there's some system that you guys use. So, anyways, well, let's see. I was going to take us to, oh crap, I've scrolled away from it. There were some really good questions in the group this week. Let's start with this one. One-piece mounts. Do any of you three use one-piece mounts for your scopes?
I've got a couple of them.
Yeah, pretty much exclusively.
Are you
Like,
a
what's the
spur guy,
question?
JD?
What's up?
Are you a spur guy?
I don't have one. I do like spur mounts though. Yeah, they're good.
What do you use?
I have a couple of the Root Tacticals. I have a Night Force. I have a Warren mount for another scope. I have an American mount. Yeah, it's kind of a plethora of mounts. So
I didn't know Night Force made one-piecers.
Yeah, they're nice actually. They're pretty nice. I have a Geisley. I have a couple Geisleys too. I'm looking to get 2-piece mounts though when I get new action from Impact, because they have that new 338 action, and that takes a 2-piece mount. So I think I'm gonna get arc rings for that.
I've never tried the arcs. I've been I don't know. I've never gotten around to trying it.
They're good. I had it a while ago, and I regret selling them.
So what's your favorite one piece?
My favorite one piece.
Yeah.
If I committed to one, it would probably be a Night Force mount. One of their Unimounts.
Who actually builds that for them though? Because I'm sure they don't build it.
I think Night Force does build it actually. A
lot of companies don't build.
I don't know. I'll talk with Oscar. I'm pretty sure they build it though.
Yeah,
I didn't know they had it.
Huh. Yeah, so the question comes off of, for all of you wondering, if you're, depending on where you're watching us, whether you're watching us on YouTube or our page or whatever, if you're not aware, we have a Facebook group that gets a lot of good discussion going, so go there. But if you go look up, there's a post literally that says, what's a decent one-piece scope mount for shooting long range? And then somebody busted out the old picture of like some Mosin Nagant with like a one-piece welded to it and then a 2-piece on top of the one piece, and I love seeing that kind of, ingenuity. The welds aren't even good, like the welds are just bad. The welds give me anxiety, even if it wasn't on a gun. Somebody just needs a lesson, but either way, so that's pretty good. But anyways.
I mean, one-piece mounts are pretty good. The only one I've hated is the LaRue. That's a vertical split ring.
Yeah.
Bro, trying to level a scope in that thing was a freaking nightmare, because not only did you have to take the rings completely apart because you couldn't just like take the top off like a normal ring. They wanted to be different. You're like trying to hold it together and then like spin the screw in, and then your scope just like slides over, especially if they had a tiny parallax knob so they weren't like weighted evenly. And then like You finally get it all in there, and you're like, yeah, and you level your rifle, and you're starting to torque stuff down, and you go to twist something, and you tap something, and then your whole scope just goes, because it can't just sit there like a normal mount. Drove me nuts. I hated those things.
Yeah, what's
Sold
that?
it
Like
as
the
soon as I
SPR
could.
mount or something like that.
The which one?
Yeah, it's like the SPR mount or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a big
Hey,
fan of that mount.
Hey, Cole, are you trying to show us something about Cryptech or now your personal Facebook page?
No,
That screen share function.
I'm working on it. Quiet. Hold on. Getting there. Judge me.
I really wish he was looking at his like search history or something. That would have been good. That would have been real
You don't
good.
want to see
Oh,
that.
Jose, we forgot the most important segment of the show. What's in the
No,
cup?
I know.
Because Cole probably moonshine with what he's been showing us.
Hey, look, it's us. It's like Inception on Facebook.
Bring Pepsi.
I'm drinking sweet tea because I'm in Minnesota, so I had to
Yeah,
bring the
look at the
South with
gate.
me.
Look at it.
Regular tea yet again.
He's Minnesota.
So, am I the only one drinking American right now?
There's your
Well,
One Piece now.
Well,
I
it's not
just
an
had
American.
2
It's
Bush
Canadian.
lattes, so.
Oh, Bush Light.
Oh, there it is. Yes.
There's your picture.
Look at that weld.
Ugh.
Oh, just bask in the glory.
Dude, that's not a Mosin. That's a. Is that
whatever
a
it
Ruger
was,
Mini 14?
I don't know. I just was so thrown off by the weld.
Yeah, it might be.
No, that's even worse because a Ruger Mini 14 is like an
Yeah,
$800 rifle. A Mosin at
Ruger.
least was $99 back in the day, and like you can justify welding that. That's like a no shit rifle. They welded shit too.
Oh,
You
yeah,
like-
it says Sturman Ruger.
It's not even Picatinny. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
I think that's a Mini 14. That hurts my heart.
Oh yeah, there it is. Ruger right there.
It's
Yep.
probably a Mini 30, which would make it worse.
Mm.
Oh,
I've seen some.
that
I've
hurts.
seen some
that.
pictures of some
Does
shady
he
shit
do
with
a
Mosins, but
QD
when they were
version,
90
I'm
bucks.
in.
Pretty rough right over bore right there.
I don't think there's anything QD about a weld unless you have a grinder in your pocket. Okay, here's a fun one I want to talk about then. Hey, Cole, scroll down about 2 posts to where the dude's asking about pulling bullets out of factory ammo.
What?
Ah, Mexican.
Hold on.
Oh, for hell's sakes.
No, hold on. No, let's not knock it till we try it. Hold on a minute. Scroll down. Like 2 more posts. Keep going.
Is this like the reloading guy that's just like filling his
No,
freaking?
yeah, all right, y'all. I know we've been funny. That one. Also, I really love the magazine there.
Yeah. I got
No,
it.
so long story short, he's asking like if he can't find powder. I think, if I remember the post correctly, could he pull a bullet and replace it with better bullets and just seed it back down into the factory loaded brass?
Yeah.
And he's talking
So-
about the shortages, which I'm totally using this as a segue, but he's talking about the shortages of reloading components, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit like, okay, for his specific question, I'm aware, long story short, he's trying to literally only replace the bullet. But I will tell you that I did one time get my hands on, somebody had literally bought a bunch of green tip ammo and just wanted the projectiles and like literally dumped the powder. This was pre-COVID. Just dumped the powder and just had a bag of the pre-primed brass or the primed brass left over.
Mm-hmm.
And I loaded that stuff. I just used that brass and loaded it. And it was like 30 ES on an AR. And I was like, that was actually right. Because I used to use a bunch of that Wolf pre-prime brass.
Mm-hmm.
But so for guys that like are struggling to find primers, if you get a deal on cheapo ammo, it's not necessarily a terrible idea if you're willing to.
So I made that joke on the LRT page earlier today. I think someone put up a video about a 7 Psalm, and I was like, yeah, if it goes bang, I'll take it. They're like, only if you can find primers and ammo. And I made a joke about repurposing cheap 308 ammo. If you're replacing the powder, I could get behind it.
Oh,
just
yeah.
replacing the projectile, your largest room
terrible
for
idea.
error is going to be the
Yeah.
powder load, and you're just wasting good projectiles at that point.
Yep.
No, you can do it. I had a buddy do that with some 300 Win Mag. He pulled some 190s, and I think it was like 300 rounds. He leveled out all the powder, so essentially each cartridge had the exact same weight. then played with the seeding depths with 200 grain A maxes, and he got better than the 338 performance for comparatively to most of their rounds out of his 300 doing that.
Yeah, but the key thing was he leveled out the powder. If
Yeah.
you're just like pull a bullet, put a bullet in, you're not going to get good results out of it.
He also tuned the length to his chamber, so it was properly suited up with lands and grooves.
Yeah.
So it can be done. It's more. There's more to it than just pull the bullet and throw another one in there, though.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, in a world where we're struggling to find primers, if you had cheapo ammo and could, like you said, the variability really comes from your powder. If you had a bunch of cheapo ammo and just pulled it just to have the primer and brass, like with the way primers are selling right now, it's not a terrible idea, right?
No, man, I'm about to throw up that video.
Right?
Have you seen that guy that reloads primers with match heads?
No.
What?
He doesn't do it for like rifle. He does it for like pistol, just a proof of concept. But it's hilarious, and we might get there.
Oh boy.
I like to see that.
I'll see if I can find it. I'll post it on the LRT page.
I would say it makes as much sense as reloading a 22, but no, that's an actual thing. So, and sadly, the only thing stopping me from doing it is I refuse to buy another 22 barrel, or I would totally have already bought the reloading kit for 22.
How do you
Dude, me and you were like polar opposites.
I like stretching it though.
Oh, you like stretching it, like buying all this stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna show up with just like some crack I found at a yard sale and send it.
Well, no, I'm talking about like for shooting, 500 yards with a 22. Like shooting those 60s sounds awesome.
Who came out with 60s? I thought it was 40s, 50s, and
it's 32s,
32s, 40s, and 50s.
40s. No, it's 32, 40, and 60.
Oh, is
but
it
like
for
the 60, they say needs like a 1 and 9 twist or something crazy.
Yeah.
1/6,
is that the cutting edge ones or the other company?
Yeah. No, the cutting edge.
Okay.
So for some of y'all that are not aware, 22 is obviously totally growing, but if you go look at cutting edge, there is actually, they will sell you, what is it? Pre-primed brass.
Pre-primed brass,
like
the projectiles,
2
and the
point,
dies.
and you load it with like 2.9 grains of some random powder, and you reload your own 22 to whatever recipe you want it, which is pretty wild to me, but they say they get some crazy results. Okay, here's your question, Solinsky.
I have not seen the guy that does it with caps from Cap Guns. That would be awesome, though, because that will be the next shortage.
Solinsky, I'm giving you homework. For the next BS session, you're going to give us a report on the guy who made primers out of cap guns.
All right.
Yeah. Dude, we should start a session called Jonathan's Book Report. Oh, man.
I'm down. Dude, I'll shoot anything. Like, I've got zero regard for my own safety, so if you want me to go shoot a mag of crap from cap guns in my primers, I'll...
we could have like the Paul Harvey news and comment or whatever that section used to be, just like Solinsky's weekly report. 60 minutes. No, it should be something way creepier than 60 minutes. We'll come up with something good.
All right.
So sorry. The question: what does the cutting edge 22 stuff cost? It was something not terribly.
It wasn't.
Terrible.
I think it was $300 for everything, and that was like
200 projectiles, 200 pieces of brass, and the dies, and then after that, all you're buying is the projectiles and the brass, right?
Yeah,
but you could buy
and like a jug of powder will last you freaking eons because it needs like 3 grains of it.
Okay, so I'm seeing 32 grain, 42 grain, and 50 grain. I swore there was going to be 60s though. I think maybe that was a later announcement. And then the dies are 122, which I've paid that for a seating die for a BR, and that didn't even feel super expensive. So the fact that the entire die set, including the shell plates, $122, I feel like is not terrible.
The one interesting thing with the reloading 22 that's sparked many discussions in different groups was should they be allowed? And I've gotten, I think, 3 or 4 I wouldn't say heated discussions, but more than like your normal informative discussion. On like match directors, they're like, "Oh, we should just ban it." Like, well, why would we do that? Like, we're promoting refining the industry to a better standard because people will start reloading it. Like, well, it's unfair to new shooters. It's really not, because in 22, it's all about your win call. If you can't call wind, it doesn't matter if you bought a $300 die set or like die and powder and primer set and all that stuff and loaded all your own stuff. If you miss the win call, you're still going to miss your $2 22 shot.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, like if you're saying that the match directors were talking about banning it, like if they're banning it because it's not fair to new shooters, it's kind of like the comment you made the other day, which that's the match director's fault, right? Like,
yeah,
it's the match director's responsibility to come up with a course of fire, and you have to be creative. You can't be lazy about it. I've had to do it, but like it's your job to come up with a course of fire that's both fun for noobs and also challenging to the not noobs. But for the guy who's going to win it, or like the guy who's willing to reload 22, is probably already such a good shot that like he was going to beat the new guys regardless, right? Like I'm not sure it's not an advantage over the new guys. It could be what separates him from the other guys that he's always there neck and neck with, right? Like, okay, maybe it's a difference there, but like reloading 22 is going to discourage the new guys. Like, no, that doesn't make sense to me at all. That's a lazy match director.
Yeah, that was pretty much my response.
Too. Yeah, you can apply that argument to anything too. Oh, I don't like the caliber. It's unfair.
Yeah.
Or the dude had lathe turn bullets. Well, that just means he's willing to spend more money than you.
Yeah.
Oh man. So update: we have lost Cole. So that's unfortunate.
So party?
Dad's not here.
Dad's gone.
He's pounding on his screen. I can still see you.
We'll talk about this when I get home.
1 second.
That's funny. Wait, did y'all? Oh, I thought Zelensky was going to get something.
Oh no, I was plugging one nostril for something.
Oh, crap. Dad can hear us. Darn it. That's funny. Okay. All right. So let's make this once again. We're going to loop back around and do something educational. So
All right.
I feel like Distinguished Tactical owes us something. Come on, give us some.
Huh?
Give us something. Come on. What's like your pet peeve you've seen on the internet this week that you want to educate people about?
Oh, pet peeve this week. And it wasn't really a pet peeve. It's something we see pop up a lot, and I saw a lot on the shooting team. I had someone comment on one of my debrief videos. Understand the difference between different shooting disciplines. So, for any of you guys that saw my debrief videos, they were 22. The first video that was released on the LRT page was shooting at an IPSC-shaped target, and the comment that showed up was, "What's so hard about it? We used to shoot national match with iron sights at 200 yards standing, yada, yada, yada." Everyone's heard or seen that argument posted somewhere with something, right? Essentially, the guy just didn't understand. One, it was a 22 LR. It was a 33% IPSC, but it's also in a discipline of shooting that doesn't have prep time, and you're shooting from an unstable position and all that stuff. Just before you guys go jumping on, so somebody that set a record is not really as good as they think they are because I do whatever else, understand the difference between the different shooting disciplines. Because that is a pet peeve for me, because I've shot pretty much everything. Like on the Marine Corps team, I shot bullseye long range. I shot high power. I'm distinguished for high power. I've shot 2-gun, 3-gun, cowboy action. The NRA World Shoot is 12 stages. Each stage is a different course of fire. I've shot that match 3 times. Like, I've done a little bit of everything. So it drives me nuts when somebody's like, "Oh, well, but when I shoot USPSA or IPSC or whatever the other ones are, is it IPSC? The one where they have to be like concealed, but they've all got fishnet freaking vests because they're concealed. IPSCA or IPC.
UPSA.
It's IDPA.
IDPA.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
yeah.
That's right.
I don't practice at all. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Sorry.
and like my biggest complaint is when people are trying to compare their discipline of shooting to somebody else's discipline of shooting to say that they're a better shooter, and they're not comparable at all.
Yeah.
Like not even a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. There are, well, and I think it's even interdisciplinary. I still love the joke that I constantly prod Justin about, which is like, he posted that article that's on Long Range Tactics, if anybody wants to go read it, about an 820-yard coyote kill. And immediately, I mean, it took 4 comments on Facebook for somebody to be like, we shoot coyotes to 1,000 in PRS all the time, like coyote-sized targets. And I'm like, you're not even talking apples and oranges. You're talking like turtles and Chevys. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
That's not even the same thing, right? Like a kill shot versus you had 2 rounds hit or miss, and you knew the exact
Anywhere on
distance
steel,
before. Yeah, like
you got to laze it beforehand. There's no movement. Like not even in the same sport.
Yeah, perspective means a lot, and that's outside of shooting too. Just perspective means a lot. Okay, so we've had a couple more questions come in here, a couple of which I like, but I think we'll start with this one, which kind of just circles back to an earlier subject, which was, I don't see why it wouldn't be allowed to reload your 22. So I think this question needs perspective, Tyler. I think what we're sitting here talking about is in fact just reloading 22 in general. And obviously like NRL 22 is the big 22 series that everybody hears about, but like apparently the central East Coast Virginia area has a ton of like one-off little mini series that don't have those gear restrictions. But specifically talking about NRL 22, the whole point of NRL 22 initially was to be a kind of an entry, like a gateway for people that wanted to shoot precision, for lack of a better term, the precision rifle series style shooting, but in a way that was cheap and kind of leveled the playing field, that you couldn't just win by having better gear than everybody. And so there, I could see where for the purpose, like for the mission statement of the NRL 22, where they literally want to be level playing field for everybody, very cheap and fun and easy to get into, I could see where a series like that maybe not allow reloading 22, because the whole point is to keep level gear. But in general, why wouldn't we allow reloading 22? It would just be personal preference of the match director and how people, I guess, people's personal convictions. But obviously, I say let innovation grow.
Yeah, then that's kind of my thing. And there's another comment that just popped up from Tyler saying, shouldn't be allowed in NRL 22. Hand loading 22 has 0 advantage in NRL 22. 0.
Because it's limited to 100 yards anyway.
Because it's limited to 100 yards. If you were going to hit that target with a 2-minute rifle, because if you actually calculate all the targets, they're about 2 minutes plus in size. If you're going to hit it with a 2-minute shot, it doesn't matter if you're shooting a hand-loaded round or elite target. You're still going to hit it. Like, I've had people disagree with me because I tell new shooters, don't go buy a new gun. If your gun shoots 2 minutes or better, shoot a couple of matches. Because all the targets are 2 minutes at least. I mean, shit, half the time they're 4 minutes.
Well, there's always the one that
NRL.
makes you shoot the quarter-inch 22, a 25-yard shot. But I get what you're saying.
But that's still, I mean, a fairly large target for the distance. Yeah. The difference between, because then once you add in the size of the projectile and you only have to clip the edge of it, it's no longer a 1-minute target. Yeah. It is much larger than that. And so a hand-loaded projectile gives you 0 benefit, like not even 1 percentage point of benefit, versus in like ELR or like the PRS matches that are going out to 300, it could have a significant impact. But at that point, again, a 300-yard, or I shouldn't say again, we haven't talked about it this podcast, but a 300-yard shot with a 22 is the equivalent of a 308 at 1,000. So you will see some benefit at those matches, but 100 yards and in, you're not going to see any benefit. It's just if they want to spend the time and money, they're going to spend the time and money. And they'll get hurt when I beat them with Lee CMP.
Ooh, cocky.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'll just roll my car on the way there. It's all right.
I'm glad JD's here for this. All right. So Ryan, watching us on YouTube, I love that we actually have people watching on YouTube that didn't just hear about us through scrolling social media while they were, taking a crap at work. So I love when people watch us from YouTube. Kestrel or app? And I'm assuming the question there is preference. So, Jeff, how do you feel about this subject?
Preference, I always default to Kestrel, just because it's everything contained in one. However, I realize that budgets are limiting. So there are a few apps that you can buy that'll do work plenty well until you can save up for a Kestrel or like a Garmin 701, something like that. So apps aren't really as limiting as people think they are.
So what app? What's your number one recommended app? And don't say Applied Ballistics.
All right, let me look at my apps right here. Okay.
Oh, I bet he's got like an entire folder on his home screen that's just like ballistics. I mean, I have what do I call mine? I literally only use Ballistics Arc on my phone. My folder is called Sports. It has Ballistics X, Ballistics app, Silencer Shop, Phone Scope Cam, and then
my folder just is shooting, and it's 2 pages just for that folder.
So I have a Ballistics folder. I have a shooting folder.
I've got 14 apps.
No big deal. I bounce back between Ballistic Arc, Ballistic AE, AB Mobile, and Applied Ballistics. And then I'll use like Straylock Pro for a few things. And then I'm starting to look at that new Rebix Optic app that came out. I'm trying to dig into that to check it out.
Yeah, I haven't played with that one too much, but it looks kind of nice.
Yeah.
I like Ballistics Arc. That's what I used forever and ever and ever until I got 5700 Elite, and I still kind of find myself, especially for 22 matches, I end up just using Ballistics Arc because it just works, and I can maneuver it faster than I can maneuver my Kestrels.
Yeah, like Ford Off, another good one that Brian just brought up. That's not a bad one at all. So, yeah, there are quite a few apps out there.
So personally, I prefer apps over Kestrel.
And because?
Mainly because people get sucked into their Kestrels.
Yeah.
Like, especially for the wind reading aspect. Like, everyone thinks it's great. Kestrel gives you the mile per hour down to the 10th of what the wind speed is. And that's great, but it's at the firing point, which has a almost negligible effect on the round. And so they forget to look downrange because they're so convinced on what their Kestrel's doing. That, and you'll see everyone at every stage spinning their Kestrel like they're summoning the freaking
I love that.
Arch from Thor or whatever. Like, just spinning it, trying to get whatever magic. And the only reason you had to spin the original Gen 1 Kestrel was because it needed airflow for, I think it was the humidity sensor.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
If there's a 1 mile an hour breeze, you don't need to spin it at all.
Well, spinning those gale force winds too, which is great. Wind's blowing like
just
20 miles an hour.
dropping the knowledge here.
Trying to lift off their Kestrel.
I like the guys that are just sitting there spinning it while they're talking. Like, they don't ever actually even look at it. It's just like they
don't even know why they're spinning it.
It's just an adult fidget spinner. They're just sitting there spinning it. like your old 1970s football coach with his whistle. Just
And they turn it for like 15 minutes too.
Yeah.
So that's my big thing against Kestrels, man, is it keeps people sucked into the screen instead of actually looking at the range. And I even started to see it taking over high power when I was leaving high power, because you were allowed to have Kestrels and electronic devices off the firing line. And so they all sat there on the ready line, which is about 15, 20 yards behind the firing line. But usually there's a berm that everyone's sitting on for the firing line. So you're below the berm for the ready line, and they're looking at their Kestrels and getting their wind speeds and everything. And it's completely wrong because they're right next to a berm that they're about to go on top of that's shooting 600 yards down range that they can't see. Yeah. And they're basing their wind call off that. And I just think people get way too sucked into the Kestrels. I refuse to use one. I think they're a fantastic tool. I think they're a great tool, but I don't even own one. I use an app because it forces me to actually pay attention to the range.
Yep. Fair enough. Ooh, we got a couple more good questions.
I was going to say, Tyler, you always need to spin.
Yes. Wait, is he still talking about wind meters? I'm confused. Anyways.
Pretty sure,
all right, so interesting observation this weekend. The range I have joined has, I kid you not, on 80% of the target posts, had ribbons, like just orange plastic ribbon, but like every freaking target basically had a wind flag. And it was incredible how the wind flags all the way up and down the range kind of differed from the mirage we were viewing, what we thought we were seeing. And you two being much more experienced than I am in that area of wind calling, what are your thoughts on that subject and the fact that those two did not match up?
So
You wanna
we
start,
did some work
Teddy?
with, we did some work with, thanks. We did some work with Emil up at Brian Morgan's this past September. And one of the things that he was saying is, I talked with Emil a little bit back and forth about mirage versus vegetation versus flags. And mirage actually takes time to catch up to what the wind's doing. So if the wind suddenly shifts and goes another direction, mirage isn't going to suddenly magically stop and go that other direction. It's actually going to slow down, and then it'll turn, whereas the flag will turn immediately. So mirage is just a slower, it's slower to get an accurate read in like a shifty wind, whereas a flag is going to be essentially instantaneous information on what's going on.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the other issue you're going to run into with Mirage is 2D because it relies on you being focused on that plane that you're looking at. So if you sit on like a 1,000-yard or 600-yard flat range, right, or something with berms, if you focus on a specific berm, so if you're at the 1,000-yard point, you focus on the 200-yard berm, right, you're going to see the mirage that's on that berm because that's where the optic is focused. You're not going to see everything in between. So you might not see that flip that happened at the 600-yard berm that's going to throw your shot way off because you're so focused on the 200-yard berm, right? Where if you're focusing on flags, even if it's not in focus, you're going to see that ribbon switch direction. And even if it's out of your peripheral, you're going to go like, oh, shit, maybe I need to take a second and adjust what my wind call is going to be. Where with Mirage, you can get kind of trapped into, oh, well, this is what it is. And you're looking at a very finite point, 1 point on the range. I think it's like everything else, it's a great tool, but I don't typically use Mirage. I use vegetation a lot because even flags can be a little bit deceptive depending on where they're at on the range. So when most people think of range flags, they think of military or bullseye style ranges, right? That they're on a 60-foot pole that's way up in the air on top of a 30-foot berm. And it doesn't give you a good reference to what the wind is doing because your trajectory is never getting up that high.
Yeah, that's fair. So I like that you said that because here's an interesting thing that I believe I've heard, let's say, information to the contrary. Wind flags at the target, they should always be like that. That is the wind. If the wind is doing three different things between you and the target, the thing that's at the target is affecting your bullet the least, right?
There's two different.
It's had the least amount of time to affect it.
Yes. So there's two different like things of thought about it that have different analogies that make you think one way or the other. So I've heard people say the wind at the shooter is the most affected because if you think about kicking a bowling ball, if you kick a bowling ball right before it hits the pin, you're not going to affect it very much. Versus if you kick it right as you throw it, you're going to get a gutter ball, right? But the other,
I thought you got a broken foot.
Yeah. Either way, you might break your foot.
Okay.
The other line of thought is that the speed of the projectile is so much faster at the muzzle versus at the target that the same wind speeds will have different effects in terms of shift from one to the other. If you're thinking like the first 100 yards versus the last 100 yards, because you've lost so much velocity as it's reaching the target.
And realistically, you've bled BC.
Yeah, you've bled some BVC, you have bled some muzzle velocity, but I wouldn't say that that's a rule because it really depends how much in front of the target that wind speed is accurate. Again, I'll bring up like your traditional military ranges because that's what a lot of people, especially our listeners, I think would be able to imagine, right? You've got a range that typically has trees on either side, and especially if it was on a base, you've got multiple ranges next to each other that have no trees the entire length of 4 ranges at the target. So your wind speed at the target, if there's a flag right there, which like at Quantico, all the ranges are in line, all the flags are right there in the pits, there is nothing obstructing the wind for like 500 yards left to right because the pits are completely cleared. But from the pits to the target point, there's trees on both sides of the range. So that flag, not only is it on like a 60-foot flagpole that's way above everything, that flag has zero resistance for the wind hitting it. So it gives you an elusive wind call because the wind that's actually affecting the projectile isn't going that fast because it isn't in that wind channel that's right at the pits.
Yeah. Okay, so JD, any additional thoughts?
No, that pretty much sums it up. Going off of flags, going off of vegetation, really, in conjunction with mirage, I'm kind of scanning everything. I'm not looking at really one specific point, but I want to look down and I want to see which direction the grass is blowing to kind of give a little bit better kind of litmus to it. If all the grass is blowing the same direction of the same magnitude, I can make a pretty good wind call off that. Even if it's blowing in two different directions, essentially, if it's blowing the same magnitude in two different directions, I really have a zero value wind. So kind of taking the concept of range flags, looking all the way down and all the way back, not really at any one specific point.
Yeah.
Good discussion. So here's one that I love. Digging way back deep in earlier in the show for this. Dial or holdover? Let's hear it, JD. You go first.
I dial, I'll hold over, and then I'll do a combination of both. So
great answer. No.
Yeah. I eat everything essentially. So
do it all.
I'm a big fan of practicing it all, just because at some point in time you're going to need to be proficient. Kind of when we went to the holdover reticles, the Tremor 2s, the HFDH, HFD9s, the Tremor 3s in the military, everyone was like, "Oh, hey, I don't have to dial anymore." Well, and they kind of threw away dialing for a little bit, but and this was years ago, guys are still crushing PRS by dialing. So dialing has a very applicable place. We'll dial for like the ELR for an extreme long range target or something like that. I'll practice holdovers just because I need to be able to hold over. But one of the things I've kind of gotten in the habit of doing is if I go shoot a course of fire at a stage, I'll dial on my first target and then I'll hold over everything else, because the primary reason I'm using that T3 reticle is because it has wind dots in it. And I'm a huge fan of, hey, I see 3 miles an hour, I hold 3 miles an hour instead of converting it to mils.
But that only works with a Tremor 3 specifically if you don't dial the first target, right? If it's always dialed at 0. Or is that not true? I had a Tremor 3 for like a month and I hated it. But mainly because it didn't agree with my eyes. There was nothing wrong with functionality.
Oh, fair enough. No, your wind dot value is going to change as you dial up. So like for 308, it's going to start like for 175 Sierra Match Kings. It'll start actually somewhere around 3.6, 3.7 miles per hour per dot, and you can round it up to 4. And then as you dial up, you're going to lessen your wind value. So once you dial up to 10 mils, your wind dot value is somewhere right around 1 mile per hour per dot. So as long as you know how to convert it, you can actually figure out what your wind dot value is. If you dial on, like let's say your first target is a 3 mil hold, dial on those 3 mils, and then with experience, you'll know, hey, that 3 mils is going to put me somewhere around a heavy 2. And round it down to 2, so I force you to hold more. So that's what I'll do.
Yeah, I'll say that I always dial my first target for competition. I always dial my first target, and then I always hold over after that. Like very rarely, like maybe a KYL stage is about the only reason that I'll dial the next target and use that time to actually reach up and like break position and all that. Like I mostly hold over, but I think that's just once again, when you talk about perspective and application, like typically a lot of times you have taller targets than you do wide in PRS general style shooting. And holdovers can be fairly forgiving, and I like to save the time and just keep moving. So I'll hold over, but at the same time for shooting game, talking prairie dogs all the way out to, shooting deer at 700 yards, I will absolutely always dial the first shot because I feel, if nothing else, it could be a placebo effect, but I feel much more refined in what I'm aiming at by dialing that. So I think it's really all about perspective and application. Personally, is my viewpoint. Anything to add there, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think application has a lot to do with it, personal preference, but it is a little bit more refined. So like I shoot the Vortex EBR 7C reticle, right? So I've got a very refined aiming point if I'm dialed in. If I'm holding, it's 0.5 mil aiming points.
Right.
Yeah, I can swag it in between, but it's still a swag. I kind of agree with JD. It all depends on what the stage is. I've done stages like the video for the debrief I'm going to release tomorrow where I dialed the stage because I had enough time. The debrief I released yesterday, I held for the stage, mainly because I had more targets to transition to, and the holds were easy. Holding is great and it's very efficient if the holds make sense. If you're holding center on the first target and 1.4 or 3 on the second target, and it's a small target, and then you're holding 2.7 on the next target, they get kind of weird. I really don't hold unless I can keep them at like even or halves. Like if it's not 1.5 mils or like 1 mil, at least with somewhere in the target. Like if it's 1.1, I just hold 1 because I'm lazy or I'll screw it up. I did a weird stage at the last match where it was 2 targets, and I ended up dialing in between the 2, and I held under 2 mils for the close target and over 2 mils for the far target because it was 2 for both. And my elevation worked out that way, just because it kept things even versus some weird hold where I'm at the bottom of the reticle. But if I have time, I always dial because, like you, I feel more precise dialing in.
Right. Well, and I think you bring up a good point about the reticle, just the reticle choices in general. That's why I specifically run the SCR2 reticle from Burris. But there's a bunch of them out there that'll offer that. It offers a 2 tenths up and down. I think the Millix T does that. The Impact 2 from Zero Comp. I know there's others. That's just the ones that come to mind. But with 0.2 for me, it makes sense. I'm either on a line or between lines, and it's pretty, it's that easy. But yeah, with the EBR7, I wouldn't. When I had that, I didn't hold over near as much either. We've had a couple more good questions come in here. I think some of these maybe, like this one, what's the best cartridge for PRS? The answer is obviously 6.5 Creedmoor. There's nothing even to discuss there. No, I'm just kidding. We've covered off on that one a lot, and I think that's a good one to always kick up in the shooting groups and see how people feel. Like all the butt hurt that happened today when one of the Burris dudes said that a 308 won't shoot past 600 yards. It was really entertaining. But bubble level or send it level, I don't have any experience with the send it.
None.
I don't know if you guys do either, but I mean, I have levels on all my guns, and frankly, I rarely use them. I kind of subscribe somewhere in the middle realm of, I guess, what Frank Galley feels, that when you shoot a lot, you kind of know when your gun feels level and kind of what's right to the earth. And a lot of times I'll be like, am I level? And I'll look up and my bubble level's right. And I'm like, I don't know why I wasted the time to look. So I know there's a lot of high-level shooters out there that swear by levels, but unless you guys feel differently, is there any further input on that question?
I kind of agree with.
What'd you say, JD?
I use a bubble level. We generally use them, but I mean, personal preference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good tool to have. I almost never use it, though. I don't even have one on my match gun. I know some chassis are starting to have them built in, and I've seen mixed things on those being accurate. So just know if you put your new chassis on, double check your bubble level in the chassis before you decide to use that for matches.
Yep, that's fact. Especially if your action doesn't marry up exactly right, then you can really get some kind of wonky things going on. My MPA bubble level never matched up to my rings. And I'm not saying the MPA was wrong. I'm saying all it did was make me wonder which one was right, and I had no way to really confirm because I could have also just mounted the rings wrong, and all it did was just kind of screw with my head. So,
and that's funny because, like, I don't remember if it was a forum or a Facebook group, but I saw a comment a guy made that was a carpenter and was like questioning people like with all these bubble levels. And he was like, well, when do you guys calibrate your bubble levels? And like everyone just started making joking comments. And he's like, no, like I'm in carpentry and have been for 30 years. And like, I have a set of specific levels that are, I don't know where he got them, but like they're designed to calibrate all the other levels. And he's like, if you guys aren't doing this, your levels are wrong. And I'm just like, we all think we're like super precise. And we're all just like, the one that came out of the box is good.
Yeah. Or the guy that has the level on top of his rings, and then his rings are actually like sitting like this, where it's touching on this side, and there's like this much gap on this side, and you're like, yeah, good job. That's that's the space on rings where they don't marry up just bothers me.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. Other question that I think has no correct answer, but maybe that's just my opinion here: lab radar or magneto speed? Don't you both have magnetos?
Mm-mm.
You don't have it all. Oh my god, you give me anxiety.
I told you we're polar opposites of this shit, man. I just true, man. I true my velocity at 100 yard for 22 specifically. I zero at 50. I true my velocity at 100, and I true my BC at like 350 ish.
We'll forgive you of your sins. It's fine.
Wait, what place did you
but
get in Tennessee?
as some people who's had both, I will tell you that honestly, for me, it's a big value issue here, and it's the fact of the matter is, I like to save. I don't like to strap something on the end of my gun and shoot for speed, and then take it off and shoot for impact. And that's why I really like the lab radar, because it's simple. Now, is the magneto more reliable as far as will you miss less shots? Yes. Have I also actually shot a spear on a magneto? Also, yes. You don't do that with a lab radar. The other thing, though, for me is value, where a lot of guys shoot the off-barrel mount. So like the big pole that you see sticking out that sticks off of an Arca rail. And at that point, your magneto is no longer touching your barrel, and you can shoot for both speed and proper point of impact, zeroing, whatever you want to call it. But at that point, the V3 costs you what, $350, $380, something like that. I'm somewhere in the ballpark there. And a lot of times those mounts, by the time you have the clamp and everything like that, is $200 more, and you're up to the price of a lab radar. And also, it's actually bulkier to carry and more time consuming to set up than a lab radar. So it really comes down to how often you use it. I take my lab every time I go zero and just constantly check my ammo, because you never know. A lot of wonky stuff happens, and I just constantly check mine because it's very convenient to use my lab radar. Do I believe a lab radar is better than a magneto? No, I prefer it for my application. And I will tell you the right answer is, what is your application? So that's at least my opinion. JD, anything to venture there?
No, that's pretty much spot on right there. I mean, I'll use I won't use a lab radar. A couple of the guys at work have them. They love them. It works very well. One of the issues you'll see with lab radar is if you go to a range and there are a lot of other people shooting, your data. So there's that to think about, which rolls right into application. But then with the magneto speed, when I use it, I'm using it for a 5 or 10 shot string right when I start firing, and that's as I'm working my zero into my rifle. So I'm already dialing my impacts in with that 5 or 10 shot string. I'll pull it off once I have a good muzzle velocity or a good base to start with, and then I'll refine my zero from there, and then true it just to make sure everything's good, because you can have some magneto speeds that are off.
Yeah. Interesting comment here. Somebody's testing them against each other for 25 shot strings, and they were 1 feet per second off from each other. I have tested them beside each other. I haven't seen them that close, but I don't think I've ever seen them venture more than like 5 feet per second.
Yeah.
So
I've never heard them being far enough apart that it would actually.
No, I think they're both incredibly accurate. Like if you're shooting 3,000 feet per second and you're reading 3 feet per second apart, that's just white noise. What do they call that? Statistical white noise or whatever that term is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you're fine there. So.
No, the biggest difference between the two is, like you said, your point of impact with the magneto speed could be off, and the lab radar doesn't have that. You also don't have to worry about loaning out your lab radar to a buddy and him shooting it.
Yeah. I didn't shoot somebody else's. I shot my own. It was pretty awesome. It was super awesome. So no, that was a great discussion though. It looks like technology has gotten the better of us tonight. We lost Cole, and now we have lost JD as well, which makes me chuckle because I'm in a hotel, as you can see by these tremendous, awesome curtains that I have.
Super fantabulous curtains.
And my free hotel internet has withstood the test tonight. But
that's because you're like one of 4 people in the hotel.
That's true. I'm probably one of 4 people in town. No, I'm just kidding. But appreciate everybody getting on tonight. We hope that it was helpful. Like I said, 60% entertaining, 40% educational. But I think the conversation went a really good direction there towards the end, and we hope it helped. We hope you'll tell your friends about this, and we kind of grow it. And we really like giving the kind of live personal feedback. So shout out to Ryan Berg and Tyler Orth for being the MVPs tonight, giving us some really good actual topics of discussion that aren't just the same thing that gets asked in a Facebook group a million times. So I really appreciate that, gentlemen. And thank y'all for thanks everybody for watching us, and make sure if you're only watching us on YouTube, you go follow our Facebook or vice versa. We really could use the help, guys, on the YouTube side. We really want to grow our reach and everything. And so if you like what we do, make sure you go follow us. More importantly, make sure you get out and go shoot. I know half the country is in a polar vortex currently, but go out and shoot, get a new shooter out there, be safe, and have fun. Thanks, guys.